Welcome everybody to Time for Five. This is an opportunity for you to learn some additional information and gain some additional insight on your job search process. Excited to have here with us today Diana. Diana is one of the recruiters that is with our Spano Pratt practice, which is part of LAK Group and is a recruiting side of the organization. And so, Diana, if you just want to take a second before we get into our topic today, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about what you do and what the role of the recruiter is.
Oh, thanks, Andy, and thanks for inviting me in to be part of this. I've been recruiting pretty much since the day I got to college. I started off as a campus tour guide and worked in the admissions office, and have just kind of always loved finding that match between the right place and the right people. So throughout my career, I've recruited for big companies like Camping World. I've recruited for little startups. I've done doctors. I've done warehouse workers and everything in between. I feel very fortunate to have landed at Spano Pratt LAK. On the Spano Pratt side, we recruit for C-suite for not-for-profit, which has been a really fulfilling role to be in right now, to make a very small difference in a community and know that I had a little bit of part in that. So it's really been a home run for me to be part of Spano Pratt and LAK. So I'm just excited to share some of the I'm excited to share some of the kind of tips for our industry and how to be successful when you are applying for a job.
And I especially thank you for that because as I talk with our clients and those that we're working with coaching, it's one thing to hear it from the coach's perspective side of things, but I think in what's special about having you join is that we get to hear from those that are actually reviewing the resumes and actually making the decision about, do we schedule an interview? And we know today it's such a kind of a mysterious process, it seems like, because technology comes into play so much with this, and there's this seemingly kind of abyss that happens when we click submit on submitting our applications for jobs, and having you be able to kind of pull the curtain back and show what happens on the other side, I think is going to be very valuable for our audience today. So thanks for that. And as you said, you've kind of been there, done that, seen it all in terms of what you recruited for. And so I think it'll be awesome to get your perspective today. So that said, let's dive in then, and kind of start off with kind of walk us through, right? So a hiring manager comes to you, or one of Spano Pratt's clients comes to you, and they have a role to fill. What input do they provide to build the job posting and screening criteria and ATS? What do you need from them?
Sure, that's a great question. So the first thing I do is I get the job description or the job profile that they have. And then we sit down, we have an actual meeting, and we just walk through everything. A lot of job descriptions are the one that was from 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or somebody hasn't updated it, or it's just got so much stuff that really isn't pertinent anymore. So we really spend the time to go through the job description and really identify what are the must-haves and then what are the nice-to-haves. What are the things that don't send me the resume if it doesn't have this, this, and this? And what if it has these three things? Oh my gosh, how fast can you get me this resume? Because I'm going to be super excited about that person. So once I identify the nice to haves, the must haves, I want to ask a lot of kind of pertinent questions. Is the job on site? Is it hybrid? Is it remote? What are the hours this person's going to work? Will there be travel required? Is it weekends required? Are there trade shows or different things that they'll be required to go to? What size of team might this person be managing or be working with? People want to know, am I a standalone person, or do I have a team to help collaborate and support with me? Why is the position open? Did someone leave in a bad way, or was it someone who just has moved on or retired? Am I inheriting a good position, or am I inheriting a position where I need to do a little cleanup?
Hmm.
The other thing we want to talk about is compensation range. Some companies have really strict bands that they must stay within. And sometimes those are dated. So I'm working with the hiring manager to be like, hey, this job, you're not going to find the person you want for that range. Let me share with you what I think is a better range, and trying to work within that. Once again, ranges are great as a recruiter because I can post the range, and then depending on how the candidate fits in terms of their experience and their tenure in those kind of roles, it can be the higher side or the lower side. So it just gives us a little bit more wiggle room. The other thing I want to talk about is national, regional, or a local search. Some positions, they need somebody local for a lot of different reasons, or sometimes it's the kind of big position where they're like, yes, please open it up to the United States. I want to see who the very best candidate from anywhere is. And we may or may not be able to do a relocation package. Two last things. I want to know the start date. Some people have a hard fast. I have to have somebody by this date. Maybe they're having their old person be available to do a little bit of transitioning, or, it's just an ASAP, like, that person left and I am in dire straits. So as soon as you can get it for me, great. Or sometimes I've gotten a manager who has a little advance notice and I can know that I have X number of days, weeks, months to fill the position. The last thing I ask is red flags. Sometimes hiring managers are like, this is a deal breaker for me, whether it's, a type of company somebody worked for, or if I see something on the resume that they tell me for whatever reason is a red flag for them. I want to ask them why that is and really understand their rationale. But I always want to be cognizant of what is important to that hiring manager because they know the culture of that position and their team. And I want to make sure I'm working to make it a good fit for them.
So we may not hire somebody from X organization if that's where they're coming from because we've had a bad experience having people come from there or something like that, right? Is what you're saying is a red
Exactly.
flag.
Yes.
And I can't help as you're talking, Diana, and describing this, it's like, wow, you're asking questions of the hiring manager that are almost the exact same things that the candidate would want to know about the job before they decide to apply. So you're kind of, in a sense, acting on behalf of the candidate as well, getting all that information that I would want to know about. Is it remote, in person? Do I have a team working with me or for me? What's the compensation? All of that kind of stuff are things that I'm going to want to know to decide if I want to apply for this job. So it's important to put it in the position description, right?
Yeah, and part of the role of a recruiter is sales. So if I don't know all the bells and whistles of the position, I don't know why you as a candidate would want to work there, then I'm doing a disservice to the hiring manager and not positioning it correctly to really draw the right candidates in. A lot of time in today's really competitive marketplace, as a candidate, you're looking at 5, 10, 15 different jobs. So I want to make sure that the job I'm working on really stands out to you.
That's an interesting perspective that I'm not sure most would really think about, right? Where it's, yeah, you're in sales. You're actually trying to sell the job to the candidate. And sometimes I think maybe as candidates, we think it's the other way around, where we're trying to sell ourselves to the hiring manager, which we are. But in order to do that, you have to sell the job to me first as the candidate. So that's not, I don't think that's something that most candidates would look at and realize about a recruiter and what the role is. So
I, I
interesting
view it
perspective.
as I view it as both. Like you're trying to
Yeah.
sell yourself as a candidate, and I'm trying to sell the business. And I think as a candidate, you should be trying to figure out, do you want to come work for this company? Is it
Yeah.
an appealing company or not?
Yeah. Very cool. So with that, so I'm going to jump in because you were nice enough to grab a job description that can help us with our conversation today. And I kind of wanted to go through that and use this as an example. And so hopefully you can see what I'm sharing here and see that we've blacked out some of the pertinent information here so that we can keep some anonymity here of this company. But so this is what you're describing. This is the job description. And so you obviously right from the get-go, you see some things here about the type of role, the location, the compensation, etc. But from your lens to the candidate, from those watching this webinar, tell us what, as you go through this, What are some important things to note in the job description here? And it's on 2 slides, so we may have to go back and forth here. But tell us
Sure.
some things that you think that the candidate should be paying attention to when they're considering applying for this job.
Sure. So if you start at the top where it walks through the summary of the job, I think whenever you're applying for a role, ideally maybe you're going to a job that's either what you're comfortable doing or maybe it's a little bit step up. So I want to read that first summary that talks about the job. Titles are hard. You shouldn't hang yourself up about titles because lots of different companies call different things by different titles. But go through that company description in terms of responsibilities and make sure those are, at least 75% of things that you're really comfortable with doing or have experience doing. When you look at that schedule, make sure those are times and dates, whether it's in person or hybrid or remote, that you can actually do. Because if it's a job that says, weekends, and you know that your kids play travel hockey and that's just not going to work for you, maybe this is a job that you should pass on. So just kind of go through step by step and make sure it's checking what you need as a candidate.
I
For
feel
the
like
comp
you're
range, like
telling me there, Diana, like don't apply because I'm that dad that's a travel hockey dad. So you're like,
I just might know that about you, Andy, and I know how important that is to you. And once
yes.
again, kind of going back to our original conversation, yes, you're trying to sell yourself, but you
Yeah.
also got to make sure it's a really good fit for you as a person.
Yeah. Okay.
Benefits, if that's something that's important to you, definitely check out that list. I think that's really nice the way this particular job post lists all of those for you,
Yeah.
so that you can check off, what's important for you or your family. So About Us is one of my favorite sections. So this really gives you a deep dive into the company and what they think is important for you as a potential candidate to know. Same thing with the Why Us. In this particular case, when we create these job posts, the Why Us, we want to get into the corporate culture. Like, do they have bring dogs to work? Do they have summer hours? Do they have a profit sharing? Do they, in this case, they have employees that have been there over 63 years that they've celebrated. That tells you a lot about the company and who they are and kind of what makes them tick. I also feel like you should do your homework. Go on their website, really dive into what's out there in terms of just what they're putting out there in the world. Do some deep dive on what they've been written about in the news. Is it positive? Do they have a new CEO? Are they launching a new product or new service or a new division? Do your homework on them to really determine if they're going to be a good match for you in terms of what's important to you and what's important to them. On education level, a lot of times it'll say equivalent experience. So please know that if for whatever reason you don't have the degree that they are asking for, if they are hard and fast and they don't give you that option, once again, you're probably not going to make it very far in the process for whatever reason someone has deemed that important. But if you have that option for equivalent experience, then that's great. You can really, your resume will be able to reflect what you've been able to accomplish. To your point, Andy, about must-haves and good-to-haves, this is what I was talking about in the past. So this is what I get from the hiring manager. What do you not want to see a resume? Excuse me, let me try that again. What resumes do you not want to see? If they don't have X, Y, and Z, you don't even want me to share them with you. And then the good to haves are those kind of the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae. So go through those two categories and really figure out, do you have everything that they want on a must have or within, the last 10%. And then the good to haves, that's just really nice. That's when you know that you're a good fit for it if you can check some of those boxes as well.
So these are the things where when we're coaching individuals, Diana, we always get them to really hone in on this part, right? Look, if your resume doesn't mention anywhere that you've got a strong knowledge of HR principles, practices, and employment laws, or you have to mention that you've got experience working with HRIS systems, kind of things. And so because that could be the difference. If it's not on your resume, then and it's a must-have on the job description, it's gonna signal to you as the recruiter that, well, they don't have it. So I'm not
Right.
gonna present your resume to the hiring manager as a potential candidate, even though perhaps that person does have that experience, they just don't have it on their resume. So it's so important and vital, like go to this part on the job description and make sure and this goes back to what you said, can you check off 75% of what you have in the job description, do you have those experiences and qualifications? And is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, exactly. And another great thing to do is you have a resume, but you can tailor it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going through this checklist and it says HRIS experience, which is HR technology kind of systems, go ahead and put it on that resume. Write down all the HRISs you've worked on so that the recruiter knows, hey, this person definitely checks this box. So as many of those must-haves as you can find a direct correlation on your resume or find a way to highlight those on your resume. Maybe it is tailoring that resume for this particular job so that I, as the recruiter, see it right away.
Gotcha. Good. And then let's go back up to the about section of the why ask, because this is something that, again, I think maybe, I'll admit, I've been guilty of this at points in my career where I've kind of overlooked this as being something very important. But like you said, here's something interesting where they're giving you some insight into them as a company. And it's not, so you may say, oh, an employee just celebrated their retirement after 63 years and the owners are hands-on and they're very often seen, visible to the employees and the customers alike. And if you're reading through that quickly, you may say, so what? But what's the message behind the message there, Diana, in terms of what are they saying here?
So they're saying they're a family-run, hands-on business, and you're going to be working with the family. If you've had great experiences, you love being part of family-run organizations, and that's something to, maybe highlight again on your resume, or if you do a cover letter to mention that as well. Not everybody has worked at a family-run company, and sometimes they're a huge success, and sometimes there's, family politics that can get into it. So, but I think what you're gathering is what's important to them. In this
Mhm.
particular company, it's the commitment to both the employees and the clients. And it's the commitment to the longevity of the employments. They want people to come, stay, get developed, grow with the company. So if those are important to you, read between the lines on what they're celebrating here and what that means as a recruiter. That's one of the things that they pointed out to me. So in my mind, I'm automatically like, longevity is important to them.
Yeah.
So if you've had 9-month year stints at different companies, you're probably not going to be someone I'm going to put forward for this job because I know how important that longevity is to them.
Gotcha. And so obviously then to that degree, right, it's um, look, if that's not for me, I probably shouldn't apply. I mean, they're giving you hints here, right? More or less. And with those hints, again, these are some things that should show up on my resume. Now, perhaps I've had a long time, most of my experience is working in big corporate organizations. So my resume may not show that, but I'm really interested in working and making a change and working for a family-owned business. I should probably note that somehow in my resume as well too. So it won't necessarily discount me as a candidate if it looks like I've worked for, but this may be some of those red flags that you mentioned a bit ago too, right? Like, look, we don't want people, or we will consider people from any kind of background, just so long as they understand that they're coming to a family-owned business where we value longevity.
Exactly. If you're trying to switch, maybe you've been in for profit and you want to go to profit, or I'm sorry, if you've been in gosh, Diana, if you've been in a profit business and you
Yep.
want to switch to a nonprofit business, sometimes across the top of a resume, someone will literally write, am interested in making a career pivot to this type of industry. But then more than that, I have to see on the resume, I volunteered at some different non-for-profits,
Mm.
or I've gone back and gotten a nonprofit certification of some sort, or I've really tried to, volunteer at X, Y, and Z organizations or been on their boards so that I see some connection, not just some words that say I've decided, I woke up and decided I wanted to make a change.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna transition here now, and because now we've looked at the job description and we've touched on it before. This interesting, I guess, acronym that we use and we talk about a lot, but it's a bit mysterious as well too. ATS, right? So I look at the job description, I'm interested, I get my resume tailored, and I submit my job application. It goes to ATS. Can you quickly explain to us what ATS is?
Excellent question, Andy. So an ATS is an applicant tracking system. And there's lots of different ATSs out there, but the main purpose of an ATS is just to help a recruiter track the candidates as they move through the hiring process. So if you imagine, some jobs you can have 200 people apply, that's a lot of names to keep straight in terms of who they've talked to, who they need to talk to next, and where are they in the process.
Okay.
What you're
So,
seeing, oh, go ahead.
yeah, so that's you just jumped it right to it. So I pulled up, kind of a screenshot here of, so these are actual, we've got it blacked out, the individual's names, but these are actual applicants from an ATS system here that you, as the recruiter, this is your view. So walk us through this.
Exactly. There's a lot of different ATSs out there and they look a little bit different, but this is one that I really like. It's very clean. It's easy to use. So this one allows us to see who's come in, who's recently applied. So that would be that new category. And then it allows me to
Right
see if
up
I've
here,
read
right?
it. And there's little drop downs on this particular one that allow it to go through unread, read, evaluating, phone screen, interview, et cetera. So I'm able to move that person through the process. The next column is the date they applied. And you can see, how quickly they applied in terms of how long the job's been open.
Mhm.
The next category is a link to their resume. So I can pull up their resume and look at it right there.
That's that view button here that you're
That's
showing,
the view
right?
button for
Yep.
me.
Okay.
That's a link to their resume and or cover letter. The next category in this particular ATS is a rating. It's a numeric rating. So in this case,
Hmm.
there were some qualifying questions that I was able to ask the candidate. Some job boards will let you bypass it, but some job boards will require you to answer some questions. In this case, they're given a numeric rating based on how they respond to the questions. So by the 7.5 and the 6.3, there were different levels that they could check that their expertise was in something required for the job. So that's how they got those numbers. Sometimes I'm able to put in deal breaker questions, which is kind of what we alluded to with the don't apply if you don't match up with the must-haves. So maybe it was, and I'm just kind of throwing an example out here, but I needed 5 years of experience in HR management, or I needed an HR degree and whatever it might be. So those are kind of deal breakers. And so if they had answered no to those, they would have gotten a 0 and they would have dropped to the very bottom of the ATS for me. I
Okay.
could still go through and see them if I wanted to, but I know they don't match the must-have criteria. The
So
nice,
ATS kind of does a little bit of the work for you then, Diana, right? By giving you this score before you even click and review their resume, you kind of know what you're going to get, right? So, um, it's really kind of helping you with your job and sort through these applicants a little bit quicker.
Exactly. It's kind of a priority system for me. So if I do have a job where, 25 people apply in one day, I start with the ones that have the highest score. It's
Sure.
just kind of like a little helping hand, so to speak, on who do I want to start with. This is where if you answer the questions incorrectly, you may get the higher score. I may click and open your resume, but when I see that you don't have the must-haves, I'm still going to reject you.
Okay.
So it doesn't really help to cheat the system in that capacity.
So some people will try to cheat the ATS system and say like, do you have at least 5 years of experience of this? And you say yes, but you really don't. That's going to score it higher. But to your point, I'm going to open up your resume and you may get a high score, but I'm going to open up, look at it, see you don't have 5 years of experience, and I'm going to immediately discount you as a candidate.
Exactly, Andy.
So what's the advice there then? Don't try to cheat the system. Be honest.
Don't try to cheat the system. Be honest. And if you're a person who, like we were talking about before, wanted to go from for-profit to not-for-profit, and you don't have that experience on your resume, a cover letter is a great idea. Or if you know somebody at the company or know somebody who knows somebody at the company, that's the way to get around the numeric system or those must-have questions. So
Because ATS is going to give me a low score because it's going to look at my resume, the computer system, and say, oh, Andy doesn't have any non-for-profit experience, so I'm going to get a low score. potentially?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But if your friend comes to me and says, "Ah, Diana, there's this great guy named Andy. I really think we should give him a look. And, he's a personal friend of mine. I know he'd fit in great in our company culture. Can you please, look over his resume and interview him?" That's great. Then I'm going to call you up and you're going to get that interview. And at
Yeah.
least it gives you a chance to share your story and share what's going on with you. And it gives you a chance to sell me on why you'd be a good fit.
Okay. And so, score wise, I see there's a couple here, 7.5, 6.3. Is there kind of a threshold for you as to when you'll open it up and read it and when you won't? Is it a hard and fast, or just, how do you decide what score gets a look from you?
So once again, it kind of goes back to the volume and the amount of time I have,
Okay.
which is not the greatest question or not the greatest response that candidates want to hear, but it's the truth. So if I have a bunch of people that came in at once, I'm going to start with the tens and work my way down. If I have all the time in the world, for whatever reason, I'm going to go through every single person who applied and give it, open up their resume and take a look. Because often there's a great diamond in the rough, and I'm excited that I took the time to open it. But sometimes it really just comes down to how many hours are in the day and what my capacity is to really spend the time going through resumes.
Cool. Okay. Um, the X, the question mark, the green check mark, what do those mean then as well too, just really quickly in terms of what we're looking at here?
Great question. So this particular applicant tracking system uses AI technology. So the
Oh,
system actually gets smarter over the course of the job posting. So every time I put a red X, that's telling the system I didn't like the candidate. The blue question marks are like, I'm not really sure. They check some of my boxes. I want to see who else has applied, and I may talk to them or I may not. And then the green check marks are people I'm really excited about, and I want to make sure that I schedule a phone call with.
so just looking at this, I mean, you've got a good pool right here. It looks like you've got 8 green check marks of people that are like, yeah, these are great. And you can even see you're in the process, 4 of them, you're interviewing them, 2, you've got a phone screen set up with them. So you can kind of see. So just by looking at this, it's a good organizer for you as well as a way to kind of help you maybe narrow down to the best possible candidates as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
I've heard something crazy, like there's upwards of, for any given position these days, on average, it's like 200 to 400 applicants per position. And so I would imagine having something like this really gets you down to those top 10 pretty quickly, kind of, or whatever the magic number is that you get to narrow down to. So getting to weed out those, couple hundred applicants that really aren't qualified for the job, ATS must really help with that.
It's a really great tool. And it's a really great tool like this one where I can put the question marks by it and then I come back to it after I've looked at all the other people. And it just helps me keep it all in front of me. So I know, every day this is what I go into. This is kind of my main tool in life. So every day I go through each job and I look at where certain candidates are in the process. I look at who's come in that's new. And so, like you said, if you get 200 to 400 people that apply, you are just trying to narrow it down to the very top ones.
Got it.
So you want to start weeding it out, and then you get really specific and particular, like it's got to match every one of those must-haves. And, sometimes you're even at the point because the applicant pool is so strong that you're like, it better have a lot of the nice-to-haves as well. So you get to be kind of picky. If the job is a little bit more unique or harder to find and you don't have as many candidates applying, there's a whole lot more leeway in terms of who you're speaking to. But yet the same thing, the ATS just keeps it front of mind for you. You know where every candidate is, you know the next step every candidate needs to be taking to move forward in the process.
Awesome. Okay, so they start to wrap up this segment. What I've heard is a couple big things, right? Read over the job description very carefully. Understand that some of those, there's some hints there, there's some must-haves, nice-to-haves. Your resume's got to speak to that stuff, because when it gets to the ATS system, in a busy day, you're going to be looking at the ones that get the high score. And so you got to make sure your resume really matches the job description, is what I've heard you say. Any kind of new or emerging trends or anything that you're seeing organizations looking for, asking for in a job applicant that seems different than tradition? That maybe as you just kind of, advice, recommendations that folks should be on the lookout for as we kind of wrap up here?
Oh, that's a great question, Andy. There's a lot of different trends that people are trying out, especially with the new AI technology. Some of the candidates may have had the opportunity, I use that word loosely, to do a recorded interview where they are some questions that are posed to them, and then they physically record it and submit it. So there's no interaction with the company. I feel like that's a lot of pressure on the candidate to try to have this perfect response and be able to submit it. Not everybody is a professional speaker or is comfortable in that kind of format, but some of the companies are using that kind of weeding out method because A, it takes time to do, and then B, they actually get to see how the person performs under pressure. Another thing that people will do is a test, whether it's like a skills test or an aptitude test, before the person's resume is even really considered by the organization. Again, that's showing effort, showing that you really are interested in it and are willing to go through those hoops to be considered for the position. Another thing is sometimes they'll pose writing questions to you, depending on the role. Maybe it's a role where you have to be a strong communicator. So they want to hear in your own words and language, your own punctuation and grammar, how you would respond to things. Often that's a little bit later in the process, when they're truly vested in you and hoping that you're vested in them as well and willing to take that time and effort. But those are some things that it's really interesting to see kind of what companies are playing with. The main thing just comes down to, really having that connection with the job, with the skills, with the recruiter, with the people you're talking to, and that the hiring manager can start envisioning you as part of the team.
Excellent. Those are some great things. One thing that you mentioned at the start is the AI and the interview, video recorded interview that they have. And I'll take this as a moment to plug LAK and remember that you, if you're watching this as a candidate and a job applicant, that LAK has an AI interview tool that you can use that helps you record yourself giving an interview and gives you that AI feedback that you can work on with your coach. So we kind of are ahead of the game here, knowing that what Diana just mentioned, right, is that's what organizations are starting to do. We actually give you an opportunity to help you practice and prepare for that by recording yourself giving an interview. So be sure to talk with your coach about that. Diana, as I wrap up, I want to thank you for your time. We're going to do a couple more segments with you, going a little bit deeper into some things and behind the scenes with the recruiters. But for this, I want to thank you for your time and encourage everybody else to tune in for other episodes and segments as well. So thanks, Diana.
Thanks, Andy. I loved being part of it.